My parents kicked me out and abandoned me because of my brother's lies. Now they're demanding money after seeing my success as an entrepreneur. I'm a 28-year-old female with a twin brother. When we were growing up, my twin brother and I were treated very differently by our parents. My parents seemed convinced that my brother was destined for greatness, while I was the so-called black sheep. This was because I was more interested in playing sports or making new friends than studying. They constantly compared us, which was demoralizing and bruised my self-esteem. I didn't get the same level of support and encouragement from my parents as my brother did. As a child, I had to watch my brother have extravagant parties on our birthday with his friends while I was treated like an afterthought. He often had sleepovers with his friends while I was never even allowed to bring my friends back to our place. To be honest, I loathed every minute of my childhood. The only person in the family who seemed to care about me was my grandmother. When she visited us, she always brought me my favorite chocolates and occasionally slipped a few dollars to me so that I could treat myself later. As the years passed, this blatant favoritism for my twin brother gradually transformed into emotional abuse directed at me. My parents would openly mock my grades and belittle my hobbies. It felt as though no matter how much I tried, I could never meet their expectations. They expected me to be the perfect child, but I was good at sports, so they barred me from participating in extracurricular activities. They wanted me to concentrate only on studies, just like my brother. It was frustrating and I felt helpless as a child. Later in my sophomore year, I got grounded yet again. This time the crime was having Snapchat on my phone. I had done absolutely nothing wrong. Like most teenagers my age, I downloaded the app to stay in touch with my friends. My parents saw it as a major breach of trust, as they'd forbidden me from communicating with my friends. They were extremely angry and threw all my stuff around the room. They even removed the doors from the hinges and told me I'd have no privacy as long as I lived. My twin brother was just as bad. Instead of supporting me, he made my life worse. Our parents' toxic environment allowed him to exploit the situation to his advantage. He lied about me and falsely accused me of things I never did. If he stole something, he just tried to get away with it. My parents and I were already inclined to believe the worst about me, and he was quick to accept their lies. He would demean me in front of my friends at school and make fun of my appearance. Despite this, I had a wide circle of friends at school because I was approachable and open to making connections. My twin, however, struggled socially and he started to resent that I could talk to people while he, as an introvert, I felt awkward. This jealousy reached a boiling point during our 14th birthday party when no one showed up for him on his birthday. I have no idea why his friends did that to him, but in stark contrast, my friends took me out for ice cream and I had an overall wonderful day. This infuriated my brother further, so he took revenge. My brother began to spread false rumors at school about me, where he would portray me as a spoiled brat and tell everyone that I was physically abusing him at home since our parents loved him more. He took things to a disturbing level to fabricate evidence. He would punch himself, inflicting injuries like a black eye or bruised shoulder. The next day, he would confidently walk into school displaying the self. He would even inflict injuries as proof of my supposed violence and make up stories whenever our parents questioned him about the injuries. He would lie saying that it was due to innocent activities like playing football with his friends. The lies in his alleged black eyes started to gain traction, and people began to believe his distorted version of events. It wasn't long before whispers started circulating. Even my friends started to treat me differently. I noticed subtle changes. Friends who used to chat with me in the hallways suddenly became distant. Invitations to group hangouts became fewer and farther between. It was like a switch had been flipped. People were hesitant to associate with the supposedly spoiled girl accused of violence. One day, I mustered the courage to ask my ex. I asked my best friend why things had changed between us. She told me that my twin brother had been spreading rumors about me. She revealed the detailed lies he had told everyone, accusing me of things I had never done. I was shocked to hear her words. I felt a mix of disbelief and betrayal. It was as if the ground beneath me had given way. My brother was spreading lies about me. He was accusing me of things I would never even dream of doing. It was a betrayal that cut deep, leaving me with a knot in my stomach and a heavy heart. I confronted my brother the day after our school, but he chose to ignore me. I begged him to stop lying about me, but he just smirked at me and told me. He said I deserved to be alone. I was at a loss for words because his lies and behavior were starting to scare me. I wanted to talk to my parents, but I was afraid that they would believe my brother over me. The isolation stung, especially because I had always been open to making friends. It felt like my brother's jealousy-fueled lies were tearing down the connections I had built over the years. Teachers started to hear the rumors too. It was a strange experience, like I was living in a parallel reality where my true self was overshadowed by the story my brother had made up. The lies had grown beyond mere teenage gossip. They were now shaping how people truly perceived me. The nasty rumor quickly reached my principal's ears, and then my worst nightmare came true. The principal immediately called me and my brother into his room as well as our parents so we could discuss these alleged rumors. I sat there heart pounding as the principal demanded the truth. I was hoping my brother would finally come clean, but instead he stuck to his story. He told the principal that the rumors were true and painted me as this bully who went around beating him up when our parents weren't around. I couldn't believe it. I was shocked as my brother continued spinning this twisted story about how I was angry at him for getting more love from our parents. It was all lies, but he stuck to his story like glue. My mom began to cry hearing my brother's story, holding on to my brother like he was some kind of hero. My dad tried to comfort my brother, telling him that it was brave for him to speak up and that he was not going to let anything happen to him after that day. I tried to defend myself, pleading with the principal that it was all made up. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of accusations, desperately trying to swim to the surface, but my brother kept at it, insisting that I was this angry, violent person, taking out my frustrations on him every day. My mom's tears kept coming as she held on to my brother. Giving my brother's accusing looks made it clear that I was up against a wall of belief in his made-up story. My principal was very firm with me, saying that the school didn't tolerate bullying and that these were grounds for suspension. I pleaded with him not to suspend me, but he said he couldn't just let it slide. I begged him, tears streaming down my face. I tried to tell him that I hadn't done anything to my brother. The principal told me that I would be suspended for 10 days so that others would see this as an example to never bully anyone. I was really upset and started crying even more. My parents were angry and embarrassed by the whole situation and came to get me. When I left the principal's office, I was really frustrated and wanted to plead my case. But they weren't having any of it. We left the school, feeling pretty down. When we got home, my dad started packing my stuff. I was really surprised and confused. I had no idea what was going on. I was in the middle of a full-on breakdown when my mom asked him what he was doing. He just shouted that he couldn't let me live in the same house as my brother anymore. I was on my knees crying and begging my brother to tell them the truth. But he stayed cold and unmoved by my emotions. My dad kept packing my things and then threw the suitcase into our foyer. I clung to my dad's legs, still begging him not to throw me out. It was like a nightmare unfolding. He told me that I was like a bully and that I didn't deserve to live in his house. He said that he would ask my grandmother to come and pick me up if she wanted to do that. It felt like the world had crumbled beneath me. I stood there in shock, surrounded by my things. My belongings were scattered in the foyer, and I was kicked out of my own home. Eventually, my grandmother did show up. She gathered all my things and helped me place them in the car, helping me into the passenger seat. She made sure I had my seat belt on before walking towards my parents' front door. She rang the doorbell, and, when my dad opened the door, she started to yell at him for treating me this way. She was really stern and determined. She warned him that if he ever approached me or tried to contact me again, she wouldn't hesitate to involve the police or the CPS. She said that what he had done to a child like me could potentially wind up with him in jail. My mother was trying to deflect blame, but my grandmother wasn't having any of it. My grandmother said it was my fault, but she wasn't having any of it. She stood her ground, defending me and saying that I was just a child who didn't deserve to be treated in such a heartless manner. That was the first time in my life I felt how powerful my grandmother was. She didn't back down to my parents, and, unlike what they believed, she trusted me. Eventually, we drove away, leaving behind my home, the only place I had ever grown up in. I can't even begin to describe how indescribable the pain I felt during that time. I remember just crying on the bed, not eating anything despite my grandmother's encouragement, I remained silent about my brother's actions. She was taken aback, but she reassured me that she believed my account. I was relieved to have her support when the suspension period ended, and I considered returning to school. It was like stepping back into a lion's den as I entered the familiar hallway. The faces of my classmates spoke volumes: judgment, whispers, and sidelong glances. The weight of the false accusations continued to linger in the air. Meanwhile, my brother blatantly ignored me and acted like I didn't exist. Some people believed my brother's side of the story, and saw him as the victim of my attacks. No matter how much I tried to tell my side of the story to anyone, it fell on deaf ears. I was an outcast, branded with an unjust label that clung to me like a shadow, no matter where I went. I went to the classroom, the cafeteria, the corridors. The eyes that met mine were filled with disdain and mistrust. I became a loner. I would keep my head down and attend all my classes, have lunch alone in the cafeteria, and then go straight back home. I had no friends, and it felt like everyone pretty much knew it. My parents never once called to check up on me. My grandmother would constantly remind me that this was not my fault, and that life would eventually be okay. I graduated high school with good grades and was looking forward to college, where hopefully I would have a better life. It was only when I went away to college that I first experienced what it felt like to be truly free. No one was watching over my shoulders, no one was comparing my grades, and no one was trying to compete with me. I met people and formed friendships with people who were like-minded. I met some great people, despite the emotional and physical scars I had sustained over the years due to my family and peers. I decided to put it all behind me and enjoy this college experience as much as I could. I also discovered my knack for content writing. I had always wanted to be a writer, but I wasn't sure if it would be sustainable for a long time. I decided to give up on my dream, but I needed to make some extra cash, so I started writing as a freelancer. I signed up to various freelancing sites, which helped me get jobs from big clients. This is how I slowly started building a portfolio of my work throughout college. I kept up this side hustle and never asked my parents for money when I graduated. Instead of getting a corporate job, I realized I could pursue content writing as a full-time job. I was doing really well in my day job because I had lots of clients, and I worked on long-term projects. I was able to build long-term professional relationships with them, which allowed me to work on multiple projects for them. Having a legitimate freelancing career not only made me financially independent but also allowed me to travel the world as a digital nomad. Traveling helped me heal from my past, even though it was definitely not easy. I saved up as much as I could and took a chance on myself. Over the years, I have seen so much of the world, and yet I have so much of it left to see. The only person who I considered my family throughout all this was my grandmother, and I had a great relationship. She was sad when I moved out, but she understood that I needed to be independent. Despite my hectic schedule, I made a point of being there for her whenever I could. I would visit her on the weekends and often share meals together or simply sit on the porch and chat about everything from childhood stories to more recent events. I would also dedicate entire afternoons to helping her with household chores or going with her to the local park. I recently finished one of the most important projects of my career. I can't mention the brand, but I was lucky to write blogs and product descriptions for them. After the project was done, I asked the team I worked with to leave me positive reviews on my websites, which they were happy to do. I then took screenshots of some of their reviews to post on my Instagram. As I expected, a lot of other content writers reached out to congratulate me on my work. I started getting messages from strangers who needed help with their website. My relatives noticed this too, and some of them reached out to congratulate me. Eventually, I was contacted by my college principal. He had seen that I was doing well and wanted me to come to college for a seminar to talk to students about building a career as a content writer. I was quite nervous as I don't do well when it comes to public speaking, but I decided to take a chance and agreed when I found myself standing before eager faces sharing my experiences and insights. It felt like my life had come full circle. I spoke in my speech about the struggles I faced and how I worked hard to sustain myself despite all the hard days. It was a very fulfilling experience to empower others and contribute to the growth of the writers' community. Some of my clips started going viral on Facebook groups as people shared them. It felt good to be finally recognized for my hard work. Last week, I was invited to speak at a local news channel. It was a show about the benefits of content writing, and they invited me to share my journey and insights with their viewers. I was a bit nervous, but also excited for the opportunity. During the show, I talked about my experiences, the importance of client reviews, and how a simple appreciation post could open doors to incredible opportunities. The opportunity to reach a broader audience and inspire more individuals in the field was both humbling and exhilarating. When it finally aired, I also shared some of these clips on my Instagram. I was proud to be invited to a TV show, and it was the first time my relatives and cousins found out how well I was doing in my career. My parents never talked about me to anyone, so they had no idea that I was working with popular brands and getting invited to TV shows. This is how word spread within my family. I guess this TV interview must have finally reached my parents' ears because just a few days later I was working on another project and had my phone on silent. When I'd finished my work, I checked my phone and saw that I had 6 missed calls from my mom. I was really surprised to see her name on my phone, as it had been a long time since she'd called me. I didn't know why she was calling. I called her back, and she picked up straight away. I asked her if everything was okay, and my mum started to congratulate me. My dad, who was probably sitting right there with her, jumped into the conversation. He started to ask me about my life and we answered their questions without much thought. It didn't strike me as unusual until they began to ask how much I was earning these days. I told them that it was none of their business, and my dad replied that we were family, so I shouldn't feel shy telling them my income. I told them that I was doing well financially, so I was a bit taken aback when my mum started talking about how hard their life was these days. I was pretty suspicious, to be honest. Here's how our conversation went. Mom, we're retired now and we've been wanting to renovate the house for a while. It's not in the best shape. We're not in the best shape financially, but we don't have any savings left. Mom, your success has given us hope. After watching your TV interview today, we thought maybe you could help us out by paying for the renovations. Dad, after all, we are a family. You shouldn't hesitate to share some of your earnings with us. We can really use the help. Are you serious? Why are you asking me for money when you haven't spoken to me in years? I don't know what made you decide to reach out to me. I appreciate the congratulations, but I'm not going to help you out. Hearing this, my mom started saying how I was being and that I needed to support them as a family. My dad also added that as my parents, they deserved to be looked after and that this was the least that we could do. I was so annoyed at this that I wanted to give them a piece of my mind. I suddenly had an idea that instead of just arguing with them, I decided to teach them a lesson for thinking they could mooch off me after mistreating me all those years ago. I told my parents that I was willing to help them if and only if they agreed to my demands. My dad asked me what it was without hesitation. I laid out my demand. If they wanted I wanted them to admit in front of our family and friends that my brother was behind the hurtful rumors that had tarnished my reputation. I wanted them to humiliate my brother the same way they had humiliated me in front of everyone by believing his lies and manipulations. I wanted them to take accountability for their actions and acknowledge the pain they had caused. My dad began to question the necessity of such an admission. My mom told me how this was all quite unnecessary, and that we could have a private discussion without involving others, but I held my ground. This condition was non-negotiable. My dad said he wanted to negotiate the terms of any future assistance I might offer them. As the tension mounted, my dad started raising his voice, reminding everyone that he was my father and that I had a duty to help my family in need. My mum, in a last-ditch effort, urged me to do the right thing and help them, reminding them of all the years they had spent together. Raising me, I couldn't help but see irony in their sudden appeal. I reminded them of the past, and that they'd kicked me out. It was my grandmother who'd raised me, not them. They started to get more and more agitated, but I told them firmly that if they wanted to establish contact with me and seek my financial assistance from now on, they'd have to be honest. My parents needed to be held to account publicly, and my brother needed to face the consequences of his actions. Since this conversation, my parents have been trying to incessantly call me, but I've been ignoring their calls. In fact, I'm starting to regret even calling them back that day. I'd like to know if I'd really be in a hole if I didn't help my parents at all. Update 1. It's been a busy week since I last shared my story. I've been really encouraged by the support and encouragement I've received from everyone. It's been great to know that I'm not alone during this time. I'm glad that everyone agrees that I should not engage with my parents, or even consider helping them out after what they put me through. The reason I gave them that condition because I knew it was pretty much impossible for them to do it. I know they love my brother too much. Despite the fact that they might have found out by now that it was all his lies, I know they will never put him through what they put me through today. My brother sent me a nasty text message after my parents again tried to when he tried to contact me. I told him I wasn't interested in speaking to him. This is what he wrote. Hey, it's been a while since we've seen each other. I've been doing well without you. I heard that your parents reached out to you and you gave them a crazy ultimatum. They're never going to go through with it. You know that, right? They never loved you. And they'll never do anything to hurt me. I admit I lied about you 15 years ago, but it's been a long time, so stop being so selfish and try to move on from the past. You're unmarried and childless anyway, so why don't you help them out by paying for their repairs and renovations? Do the right thing and be a better person. My daughter saw the message, and it felt like a stab in the chest. The way he dismissed my struggles and the conditions I had set showed a lack of empathy. The attempt to guilt-trip me by emphasizing my unmarried and childless status was another layer of insensitivity. His insinuation that I should prioritize their needs over my own was offensive. It was offensive, and showed how little he thought of me. I was frustrated and wanted justice, so I decided to take matters into my own hands and reveal the truth that had been hidden for too long. I sat down to write an email to my parents and close relatives, sharing the painful details of my childhood and the unfair treatment I had endured. In the email, I described the strict and oppressive environment I had growing up at my family house and how my parents treated me differently to my twin brother. I also wrote about the malicious and completely untrue rumor my brother had spread about me at school, which had led to severe consequences and affected my reputation. I wrote about how my parents had kicked me out, and how if it hadn't been for my grandmother, I might have been in serious trouble by now. I asked everyone to read a message my brother had sent me. I attached a screenshot where he admitted to lying about me. It was a clear confession that I hoped would expose the lies that had persisted for too long. I sent the email just an hour ago. I know that things will get pretty intense once my parents and my brother read it. I'll give you an update on how my family reacted to my email. It's been a month since my last update, and a lot has happened. As you can imagine, my family was pretty upset after receiving the email. My parents have received criticism from relatives who were previously unaware of the extent of the favoritism and emotional abuse. A lot of the family members reached out to me. They told me they had no idea about all this and apologized for not being there for me. My brother and my parents sent me a lot of text messages that were getting more and more abusive and violent, so I decided to get a lawyer. He sent them a notice of cease and desist, basically warning them not to contact me further or they would have to face dire legal consequences. I think this must have scared them straight because they stopped contacting me. My grandmother thinks I did the right thing by letting everyone know what happened and supports me 100%. She is the only person who matters to me, so I'm glad she has my back. Update 3. It's been 2 months since my last update. I am happy to report that everything in my life is going well for now. Professionally, my content writing my business is doing really well. I've been getting lots of invitations to speak at seminars and podcasts, which is great because it shows that I'm a respected figure in my line of work. I've been spending a lot of time with my grandmother recently. She's really into gardening at the moment, and has taught me a lot about different flowers and herbs in her garden. I spent time with her, sharing meals, engaging in heartfelt conversations, and simply enjoying each other's company. These are my favorite and most cherished memories. My family didn't contact me after the letter they received from my lawyer, so I'm happy that they are staying away from me personally. I have started going to therapy, so hopefully I can work on healing myself. I think this will be the last update for now.